Hey everyone, and welcome back for part 2 of my Mini M Aquarium build. I'll leave a link above in case you missed the first part, where I set up the substrate and the hardscape. You might be able to tell that the aquarium was moved to a new location since the last video. I've been moving things around quite a bit and making space for some new setups in the gallery. I'll start by taking apart the hardscape that I just built. Why, you ask? For this layout, I plan on using a lot of moss. I think it will be easiest if I remove the pieces of driftwood to add the moss, rather than trying to work in such a tight space. The layout looks really empty without those pieces of driftwood. I haven't used moss in an aquarium for a very long time. This is mostly because I've been intimidated by the maintenance requirements and trimming, but also I've enjoyed being able to see the wood element of the hardscape without it being covered by additional plants. It felt like it was time for a change, and I wanted to fully embrace moss in this setup. I'm using ADA tissue cultures here, specifically Taxiphyllum barbieri, which they describe as being a fine, soft-textured, smaller moss when compared with the more common Java moss. I've never kept it before, but I know it's most common in nature aquarium layouts, so I'm excited to see how it grows. Since it's a tissue culture plant, it comes in this gel. You'll need to rinse off the moss in a cup of water to get as much of the gel off as possible. Usually I can't remove all of it, but it's not dangerous to the aquarium, so there's no worries there. It'll dissolve over time. I planned out where to plant the moss on the pieces of driftwood ahead of time. It needs to grow on the upper side of the driftwood. It would look rather unnatural if it was growing underneath. I line up the pieces of moss on the driftwood as I like it. Then I grab ADA moss cotton. This is an awesome product that threads to fix the moss onto the hardscape. It naturally biodegrades long term after the moss has already established itself on the driftwood. For me, this is so much better than using a glue where you'll just have some residue left afterwards. This was my first time using moss cotton in a long time, so I definitely struggled a bit here. The most annoying part was wrapping it back to the original spot so I could tie it. Despite the struggling, it was totally worth it, and it worked like a charm. To make the pieces of driftwood look a little nicer, I trimmed the excess pieces of moss that were sticking out. It gives it a much cleaner look. Now back to the aquarium, I placed my 2 pieces of driftwood back in. I was so worried that I might forget their exact placement, but luckily it was fairly simple here. The only difficulty was accidentally stirring up some of the power sand by disturbing the soil. So I had to use a pincette to remove those pieces. You won't want them exposed on the soil for aesthetic reasons, but also because it could leach too many nutrients at once, negatively affecting the water quality. After getting the second piece of driftwood back into place, it really made the layout look so much more natural and beautiful. I guess I'll have to start using moss a lot more often in the future. Before I start planting the rest of the aquarium, I fill up the water level very slightly. I found it best to plant into the soil when it's been slightly filled up. I'm not really sure why I decided to use a paper towel here as opposed to like a plastic bag, for example, but I use it here to make sure that the soil isn't too disturbed when I'm initially filling it up with water. I use the back of my sand flattener to fix any major imperfections with the soil level. I'll be planting Glossostigma elantinoides in the foreground. I just took some extra pieces from my 60p aquarium. It's probably not the most ideal carpeting plant for such a small aquarium, but I wanted to get more practice in growing it. You can see that the soil level rises slightly as I plant into it. This is why I left it so shallow at first. Hopefully this Glossostigma will grow well initially, since it's already been adjusted and accustomed to growing underwater. I usually like to plant very densely from the beginning, but I just used up what I had here. Glossostigma grows very quickly once established, so hopefully it won't take too long before it carpets. Next, I plant some more tissue culture plants that I purchased. The first is Hygrophila araguaia sharpleaf. I thought it could be a wild-looking midground plant that could offer some interesting colors. I've kept it a few times before, but never really highlighted it much. I thought it would be best to plant it in and around the pieces of stone and driftwood. Then, I start moving to the background of the aquarium. In the gallery, I currently have no stem plants, so that has to change. First, I have Myriophyllum species Mini Guyana. It's a beautiful feathery green plant, and it's much smaller than the more common Myriophyllum matogresensis. I'm planting it on the left and the right side mostly, but I wanted to try mixing the stem plants in this layout together. So, in smaller amounts, it's also planted in the center portion. Next, I prepared my other two stem plants for this layout, Rotala species Vietnam and Ludwigia arcuata. These two plants should provide a lot of color long term. They both turn quite reddish orange and also have feathery textures. That was kind of my plan for the stem plants in this layout. Like before, they are also mixed into the background, although they are more in the left and the center side of the aquarium. I didn't want to plant them as much on the right side, since compositionally it's a triangular layout, and I want the right side to be the shortest point. It's very convenient to have space behind the aquarium to stand, and it makes planting a lot simpler. Not to take away from light screens or other backgrounds, but I also enjoy watching the aquariums from behind. I think it gives it completely different perspective. I usually save the epiphyte plants for last. To keep with the nano theme, I have two small plants to use. One is Bucephalandra species needleleaf, which is an extremely small variety of Bucephalandra. You can see that it was also sourced from a tissue culture, and so it looks quite underdeveloped. Since I will be using a new filter and cycling the aquarium, if any of the plants are to melt, this is the one I'm probably most worried about. Finally, I plant some Anubias nana petite. Unlike the Bucephalandra, this species of Anubias are the ones that I've kept in other aquariums before, and like the Glossostigma, it should fare pretty well since it won't need to go through any transition period. Now that the planting is complete, I have to begin filling it up. Again, very slowly to make sure that I don't uproot any of the plants. While that's filling up, let's talk about the filtration now. For this aquarium, I'll be using the Oase Filtosmart Thermo 100. It's the smallest Oase filter, and it's rated up to about a 30-gallon aquarium. Like any other setup with high-tech planted aquariums, it's important to use a larger filter. I'm not a big fan of their provided media, but I'd keep that sponge in the center and replace the media in the right compartment. The bottom half is filled with ADA Bio Rio G, which is their biological media. The top half, I will have a small bag of carbon, which should help the aquarium immensely in the first few weeks. After a month or two, I'll remove that and add in additional biomedia. Even though I'm not a huge fan of the design of this filter compared to their Biomasters, the best thing about it is that you can add a heater to the filter and not have it inside of the aquarium. Without a heater, my water temperature would go down to about 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 Celsius, so it's necessary for me to heat all of my aquariums in the gallery. I've replaced their provided hosing for my own. It's a 12 by 16 millimeter hose with a reducer to a 9 to 12 millimeter hose. This allows me to use my smaller 9 by 12 millimeter lily pipes, which is way more appropriate for the size of this aquarium. In the future, I'll have to make a video on this, but I'm testing out the ADA CO2 Advanced System Forest. The reason I'm not making it a part of this video is only because I've never used this system before, and I want to get more experience with it before discussing. It seems a cool idea. It's a small disposable CO2 bottle connected to an ADA regulator, a ball valve, and a beautiful diffuser. Unfortunately, I have to manually turn on and off the CO2 daily with the ball valve, but you can purchase a separate solenoid if you wanted to put it on a timer. I decided not to do this with the setup, since it wouldn't really display on the cabinet as nicely. This aquarium is now fully set up. I think the Mini M is great for anyone who wants to get a super high-end system without having to spend a crazy amount of money. You can still create a really nice layout in a size like this too. Now you can see there's an empty space in the gallery where the water box aquarium used to be. I'd say that there's room for maybe one more aquarium, but we'll have to save that for another video in the future. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.